Welcome back to the Go AI podcast. We are thrilled to have this week's guest, Jacquelyn Core. Jacquelyn, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am a founding partner in a mergers and acquisitions law firm, Jordon Voytek, and then also a partner and the CEO of an investment bank, Jordon Voytek Capital Partners.
Okay, everyone keep paying attention. She's very smart, obviously, and successful. I mean, to me, how can you tell us a little bit about how you got there? Because that's a lot that you do. I've never personally met a female who is running their own mergers and acquisitions firm as well as then investment banking. You're also a Vistage speaker and travel all around the world, right? Or country at least.
Yeah, so I was working at a mid-size firm. I had made a bunch of career changes early in my life. I started out in big law, spent a lot of time there, was a partner, got my PhD when I was there, spent some time in academia, ran a nonprofit for a bunch of years. I mean,
It's
I've
amazing.
reinvented myself a bunch of times. And I had transitioned back into private practice and was practicing law again.
What year are we at this
So
point?
this would have been 6 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
And met my now law partner,
Okay.
Michael Voytek, who's an amazing partner. And he and I were doing deals together. And um, I was working on building a book of business, and we just kept having these generative discussions about how we could make things better in the practice of law and how we could better serve clients and how we could meet lawyers where they were and be more sensitive to people's needs. And eventually, as Michael says, we just decided we were just going to hold hands and jump and start this law firm.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of funny because we actually literally got out a yellow legal pad, and I wrote down on the left-hand side all the expenses I could think of. And we literally went through this exercise where it was like, okay, Michael, how much is your mortgage?
Yeah, like, can we
Right?
do
It's like,
this?
how much is my mortgage? Okay. How much is your electric bill? How much is mine? How much do we need to eat on? And we came up with a bottom line number. It was like, we need to be able to make this much to not lose our houses.
Yeah.
Right?
And our
Which,
Netflix
like, when
accounts.
I go back, right? Well, I mean, I think we were willing to give up Netflix.
No,
And
yeah.
I say that, but it's so true. I remember Michael saying, "I'll drive Uber if I have to.
Mhm.
We're gonna make this work."
I mean, that's a
And
good partner.
yeah, he's been an
All
amazing
in.
partner. Yeah. But I just feel like he and I were just, when we decided we were gonna do it, we at the same time made a decision there was no way it was gonna fail. We
You
were
need
just gonna
that.
make it happen.
Mhm.
And it really came out of us wanting to have flexibility for ourselves and be able to do things in deals our own way. And then the investment bank came about very much the same way. It
Okay.
was that we kept having clients ask us, "Hey, would you sell our business?" And we kept saying, "We're lawyers.
We can't do
We can't
this.
do that. We don't have a process set up. We're not registered with the SEC. We just can't. There's no way we can." But then they wouldn't get great service and it would make us angry.
So you're like, you
And
saw the opportunity.
yes, and
Mhm.
so we just, it was the same. We decided we could do this so much better. Now, it remains to be seen how everything's going to go in the end, but it's not the end. So far, everything's been amazing, and we've had the opportunity to work with some amazing people already, and it's been a really fun adventure.
That's exciting. I mean, congratulations,
Thanks.
because that taking that leap and like writing all of that down, I think every entrepreneur or somebody who just has tried something new can relate to. But I mean, you have kids, you had a long career, a successful career. I mean, I'm sure that's a lot of pressure. You're like, I mean, I think that you had even said the firm that you all built, I know you were sensitive to the needs, but you're one of the only firms that the lawyers are all remote. Is that, am I
Yeah.
speaking out of
No,
context?
you're not.
I mean,
We're fully remote. We are 100% remote. So we have lawyers in Vermont and down in Texas and in Florida and in West Virginia, and the investment banks the same way. We've got people scattered all over the place, and it's also fully remote. And I had just developed a national practice, in part because of Vistage and the connections that I've made through Vistage. we were working with business owners all over the United States. And so it doesn't make any sense to have an office. Those people are never going to walk into our office anyway. It's just an expense that we don't need. And I guess if you had a different practice, if you had a family law practice or
Sure.
you had a litigation practice where you needed office space and there was a reason. But doing M&A and transactional work and fractional in-house counsel work, we just didn't need a physical space like that. If we need to see our clients, we go to them.
Did anyone look at you, like, when you said that you were all gonna be fully remote, like, "You're crazy," or just give you kind of like, "What?" Because
Oh,
again, you're taking this leap, and then not only are you taking this leap, you're creating something that is unique in the market, so
people still think it's crazy. Yeah, people still look at us that way. It wasn't anyone.
It's still
Yeah,
happening.
it's still happening. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. How I mean, to kind of go into I mean, obviously, you're an incredibly intelligent woman. You're very successful. AI in your landscape, what comes to mind initially when you just think about artificial intelligence?
Well, I had to get over the period of time where what came to mind was terrible fear.
Yep. I think everybody's like,
Right.
"What's gonna
My first
happen?"
reaction was, "This is horrifying." And I think, that's the lawyer in me, right? And you hear the bad things about AI, especially in the context of the law.
Yep.
So, AI hallucinates.
Mhm.
It does in
Mhm.
fact hallucinate, and you see these instances highlighted where people use AI in really lazy ways,
Yep.
which I think is the real problem with AI is that people don't spend enough time on it and don't learn how to use the tools appropriately and also don't do the research that's needed to back it up sometimes, right? It will get you so far, but it's not right now at least going to get you all the way there. We're not at a place where AI is replacing humans,
No, we are
right?
not.
And I think the people that we've seen fail in the legal context have tried to use it in that way. They've tried to say, I don't need to be a human anymore. I could just have AI write this brief for me or AI provide this answer for me without fact checking that, without making
Without
sure,
sources.
yeah, without sources, without making sure that it's right. Right. And that's where I think so much of the spin up about the danger of AI happens and and it's where that fear comes from. And so when we started to look at it as a law firm and started to look at it in the investment banking context, it's how can we use this uh, in responsible ways that will make us more efficient, that will allow us to serve clients better. And there are things that we can and definitely do use it for. Um, one of the nervous points in an M&A lawyer's life, you're trading red lines back and forth. So
Okay.
the red line is literally what it says for anybody who doesn't know what a red line is. It's literally the document with black words printed on it. And then as a lawyer, you can go in, turn this function on, and make it a different color to show your changes,
Okay.
right?
Thank you for
And they
explaining
call
that.
that a red line,
Okay.
right? Not everybody would know that. If
I
if you
appreciate
know
that.
that, just ignore that explanation.
No, no,
But
that's great.
but that's the red line,
Okay.
right? And you trade those back and forth with the other side. You red line, then they red line. They might red line out your red lines,
Oh, geez.
and you get these documents back and forth, and you always wonder in the back of your head, did they change things they didn't red line
Ooh,
that I'm not catching?
Mm.
And
I've never
s-
even thought about that.
and
Okay.
sometimes the answer is yes.
Eeh.
And the vast majority of the time, those changes are non-controversial changes where they just fixed an error in something or changed
Sure.
the spelling but sometimes you will find something material that somebody has changed. And so when you have like the purchase agreement we're working on right now is 60 pages long. And so
Jeez.
when you're working on a 60-page agreement, you're not going to notice if a sentence changed necessarily. You might catch it. If the meaning changed, you might catch it, but it's a scary
That's
prospect.
terrifying.
And so we literally in the oldie days, right?
Mhm.
We used to have paralegals go through documents line by line and read them to make sure that nothing else had changed.
Oh, wow.
It took forever and it was very expensive for clients
Yeah, sure.
and now and then there was I think a period of time where people just sort of trusted each other like, "Oh, there's professional responsibility. We don't really have to worry about this." People wouldn't do
I'm
that.
ethical.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. I'm ethical. Everyone else should be
sure.
ethical. Um, but now you don't have to worry about it because you can just plug those documents in. You can compare them and you can see if there's anything that was changed that was
Through
missed.
AI.
Yeah, through
Through wow.
AI. That's a very simple use, but it creates a huge efficiency. It provides a great service to a client so that you can say definitively nothing else has been changed,
Sure. And
right?
peace of mind, like, for
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think our approach to it was, how can we use this in ways that are not risky,
Mhm.
that, you know, just create efficiencies and create drive value for clients. And so that's been our kind of goal for implementation.
And across the legal industry, you mentioned the problem of hallucination. There was one early case with ChatGPT, a lawyer who plugged in a case and said, you know, just give me, I think, just like a summary um, of my argument, and I'll just be able to present it to a judge. And the chatbot demonstrated what's known as the false alignment problem, where you try to have it align with your goals, but sometimes it'll falsely align where it says, hey, I did what you wanted me to do, but it didn't do it in the way that you actually wanted it to do. And in the case, what happened was the chatbot gave cases that supported the argument. Just the problem was the cases were just not real. They were
Right. From
total fiction.
literature.
Total fiction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering what other, um, with your knowledge and experience, what other aspects of just the work of a lawyer you just simply would not want to have AI touching?
So I think that another really scary thing for us is the uploading of documents
Mhm.
and the use of AI to exactly what we're doing, like to compare documents and things like that, and people not understanding that you need to opt
Excuse
out,
me.
of the learning, right? I'll contribute to the learning so that you're not putting confidential client information out there. We do intellectual property work. We can't be using, and our intellectual property lawyer knows, he'd be a better guest than me. He knows
Never.
everything. He knows
Just kidding.
everything about this, but he's very savvy, and we've been very lucky to have him on the team to kind of help us navigate this a bit. But I think that you have to be very careful in the legal context that you have people's confidential and people's privileged, attorney-client privileged information, and that you're not using AI in a way that might compromise that. And so that's one of the other things that I think as in the legal field is really scary.
On the flip side, what are you comfortable with AI automating? You mentioned the redlining and like figuring out like, hey, what changes were there? Is there anything else that you're really excited for AI to kind of jump in and just take care of?
Yeah, I mean, I am excited. This is like a real Jetsons moment for me, right?
Mhm.
I'm really excited for audio commands to be integrated into AI to do some of the routine things that we have to do as lawyers. So, for example, we have to send an engagement letter out anytime we engage a new client.
Okay.
And we have a form, and that form has sections highlighted in yellow with everything that needs to be changed, right? And I struggle with that task. I do them for the firm,
Mhm.
which might sound crazy to people who are listening, like, oh, really? She's
You're sending
one
that
of
out.
the
Yeah.
managing partners of the
Mhm.
firm, and she's the one doing she's actually putting the engagement letter together. But I have the form done in such a way that it would take me as long to tell someone to do it as it does just to do it. So I end up just doing it myself.
I think a lot of
But
listeners could relate to that.
right? There
As
Mhm.
are the
business
things.
owners,
It's like,
yeah.
will this save me
I'll
time?
just do it.
Mhm.
It's fine.
But I feel like I have really gotten a lot of synergy from being able to listen to emails being read to me while I'm driving and respond in that audio interface.
Mhm.
And I feel like when that audio interface can interface better with AI, like that's my next step is I want to
Mhm.
find a way to get those things done on the fly
Yep.
using an AI interface. And that's a very simplistic use of
Mhm.
AI. I mean, that probably
Yeah.
does not sound earth-shattering at all, but it's those kinds of routine tasks that we do that I think could really
Could yeah, save time
save
and
me
money.
time, save the practice time.
Well, and it's hard. I mean, you mentioned like it, versus teaching someone to do it, I'm going to take it on myself. Well, AI, there's a lot of people that are still fearful, especially from a leadership standpoint. And, a lot of people on the show have mentioned, it has to start with you as leaders. And we're busy, right? You're blocking and tackling during the day. You mentioned yesterday, it's back to back to back meetings. What has been your challenge with leading this I would say, implementation within your organization? When you are busy, people are probably afraid of it, maybe not all of your firm. And it's where do you start?
I think the biggest challenge has been that we actually have seen it go wrong. And um, we've never had any issue. We've always known it went wrong, so there was not a problem. And typically it's not us causing it to go wrong; it's the clients.
Oh, okay. You're
So
gonna have to give an example
yeah,
here.
so let me give you an
Okay.
example. So I wrote a demand letter for a client,
Okay.
and I sent it to the client, and the client put it through AI to simplify it
Hmm.
and to
Okay.
make it shorter because the client thought it was too long. And AI did make changes to it. And one of the things that it did was it tried to organize the points of the demand, but it did it in a way that created a duplication of damages where we were asking for the same thing twice in the version of the letter that came back.
Oh,
Now that's a real problem,
yeah, that
right?
sounds horrible.
And so then I have to go back in for that same client and fix that. It's like, this is not cheaper, guys,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I think we have clients that are trying to use it. Sometimes clients will say, hey, we want to terminate this employee. I had AI write this termination letter.
Oh, that's a good
Mhm.
example. Yep.
And here's what I'll say. I think it's great, at least, that those clients are saying, look at it.
Yeah.
There's
At
right?
least put your eyes on it.
Like the people who are smart enough to say, "Hey, I had AI do this. Now can you look at it?"
Hmm.
Mhm.
But I know that that Sandy, who is our employment lawyer, who's brilliant, has had a couple of instances where uh, people have there's been a big miss, right?
Oh,
Because there are federal and state requirements in employment law, and unless you're giving it exactly the right command, to your point earlier, like it did what you told it to do, but it didn't do what you intended. So getting people over that hurdle of how do you communicate your actual intent, right? So did you tell it what state you were in? Did you tell
oh,
it,
yeah.
right, you want it to comply with federal law? Because if you don't tell it that, then it does not know.
Mhm.
And
It'll make
so,
it up.
yeah,
Yeah.
or it'll just make the assumption that makes sense, right? Based
Sure.
on the
Mhm.
limited information you've given it. And so I think that's really the error, is that when somebody is saying, do the termination letter, they're not saying, and I'm in Indiana, right?
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Or whatever the case might be,
Yeah.
right?
You need to abide by
And,
this law.
and so I think that our biggest hurdle is that we've seen those kind of problems and caught those kind of problems, and it makes the lawyers reticent to use it.
Mhm.
And so, how do we have discussions among our team about, to your point, what are we comfortable using it for?
Yeah.
Mm.
Where can we implement it? How could it save our clients money? How could it drive value? How could it make our lives easier? Um, in ways that also mitigate the risks of AI. And I think there's a lot of discussion too happening right now about the legalities of AI,
What are
right?
you
And
reading about when because there is. So what
yeah,
catches your eye
um,
from a legality standpoint?
here's what I'll tell you. Here's what I'm reading about. Nobody knows anything,
Yeah, it's the
right?
wild, wild west.
Yeah. Yeah. So I keep signing up for these AI webinars. It's like, this person's from this brilliant Ivy League university, and they're going to talk about the legalities of AI. And in the webinar, the whole webinar is pretty much, well, we don't really know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know? And so, and I say that not at all to take anything away from if somebody asked me to do a webinar on AI, it would sound the same,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
There
not
it is still a little bit the Wild West. We don't know what we don't know, and we are still learning. Um, and the time lag of the information that's available within AI, these things all create potential legal issues.
yeah.
And that is gonna be something in the legal industry that people are going to have to navigate.
That hits on an important point where you had mentioned just figuring out company culture around AI. There's a marked difference between what's legally okay just in the landscape and just what's culturally prescribed within a company. So, what are some of the, um, I'll just call them prescriptions that you would give to your employees around, hey, no matter what it says it's okay to do outside in the outside world within this company, if you're using AI, here's what you ought to be, here's the expectations.
So, we were at a Vistage meeting the other day, and there
Yep.
was a speaker on AI, and one of the things that hit me the most, and it's not necessarily a novel thing, but every time I hear it, it hits me, is, you know, your people are gonna use AI, whether you tell them to or whether you tell them it's okay. So you're better off to be proactive
Mhm.
and get some
Like a policy or
right,
Mhm.
right, some
Yep.
guardrails around it, um, because they are gonna use it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I I don't know that that's as true in law because our people are still a little scared of it. So it's more for us, it's more about how we can drive it and
Mhm.
how we could, make it drive value. But I think the one thing that we have just said very openly is if you have issues that crop up, please share them. We have a weekly team meeting of all of our
Oh, wow.
lawyers. And so please, if you have a client issue that comes up or you have an issue with AI, share them in this forum so that we can keep our eyes open and we can know what to watch for because I think we're still learning what to watch for. And the second thing is just driving home always that we as lawyers who are licensed to practice that the buck stops with us.
Yeah.
And you can use these tools, but in the end, you're going to be responsible for the content that gets generated. And so that I think is kind of the ultimate rule for us is your license is online here and you're responsible for the content that's generated. So if you're going to use this, you need to be double checking it. You need to be sure that what it generates is accurate. And you need to be able to vet, the individual use of it.
Yeah.
That is about as prescriptive as we have gotten, I'll say. Um, but I do think that when it comes to bringing people along and finding the ways that we can use it, I think that the prescriptions in place and the guardrails put in place will have to be greater as people start using it.
And
Yeah.
as the technology evolves. I
Yes.
completely agree. From a legislation standpoint, they talked about, well, they are talking about, and Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, but like images with watermarks, being able to, hey, if you're using AI, you have to mark it as, this is AI generated. So where do you think, from a legal perspective, in the next few years, where do you think legislation is going to play a role in this?
Yeah, it's really going to be most interesting, I think, to watch what happens in the intellectual property space
Okay.
surrounding this because the big battles now are kind of this idea of can I take something that's AI generated and can I patent it or trademark it
And say it's
Mhm.
mine.
and say it's mine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and you know, I get the argument that you can because the creativity behind whatever that is, you drove as the person instructing AI, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it'll be interesting to see when there. I just read an article the other day about elements being duplicated. So AI, to the extent it's designing things, is still getting those designs from past designs.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so there was a um, there was a an article where somebody had just identified out in the marketplace a logo, and I hope I get it right, but I think it was like Sinclair oil, maybe. It was a dinosaur. Do you
Oh,
guys
wow.
remember that?
I mean, I
It's
remember.
like an old logo. And the article was about how many places the Sinclair dinosaur had shown up in AI generated images.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I hope I hope I'm correct when I say it's Sinclair.
Yeah.
But it was like a oval logo and it had a dinosaur in it. And it was like some
Mhm.
some really old oil company.
But that's such a great example.
Yeah.
And they were talking about elements, being pulled from this knowledge that AI has and reincorporated into things.
Yep.
And so I think it'll be interesting to see how do we protect those things on a going forward basis.
That does speak to where the divide between what a human creative and an AI creative would do is that a lot of it is just common sense, which a human creative wouldn't knowingly use another company's logo in something that they're creating. Whereas AI, it's kind of just like, sure, I can use this. It's like it doesn't have a grasp of copyright law. It might have, you know, training data that says, hey, here's what copyright laws are, but it doesn't actually know what it is. So again, it's false alignment. It's like we just need to, like, this system just needs to get a combination of elements that satisfies the prompt that it was given. And if it's if it un the problem is that if you're a human being and you don't know the logo, you're still like, even if you fact check it, you're still like, I don't know if it actually made an infraction or not. So how responsible should I be? Um, so yeah, that's kind of legally, that's kind of a quagmire
Yeah.
going forward. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned you were reading this article. What I mean, for other owners that are listening that are within the legal realm, are there specific publications that you like to follow where every week you're like, hey, read this, or are you all over the place?
I would love to have that kind of time.
Okay.
Um,
Or podcasts or
yeah,
anything that
yeah.
like, yeah, you're
No,
listening
I
to.
mean, that article was literally an article that popped up on my LinkedIn feed,
Okay. No,
and every
exactly.
time I see something like that on my LinkedIn feed, I always think it's because I'm friends with Curtis Wadsworth, who's R.I.P. lawyer.
You're
Because
like, oh, I need
yeah,
to read
Curtis is
this.
reading all that stuff. It's like, oh, that's probably there because Curtis read it. Um, but yeah, I don't, and I do rely some on him because he
Sure.
really is much more on top of it.
As he should be,
Yeah,
right? I
yes,
mean,
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, no, there's not anything, at least that I'm using on any regularity. But I will say, I do try if I see something about it, I try to take at least a quick look at it to sensitize myself again back to the discussion we were talking about before. How do you figure out even what the issues are? And so that's the big thing for me is when I saw that, I thought, oh, I'm going to take a quick look at this so I see what's happening here
Sure.
and I can just make people aware of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you're
Yeah.
being proactive and not putting your head in the sand, which a lot of leaders are. And that's going to be a challenge for their firm.
This is something I think that you said on a prior episode, right? You talked about AI is not going to replace people. People who use AI
We'll replace.
will replace people who don't.
Hmm.
And I think that is what we want to be most cognizant about. Now, we're industry disruptors in many ways
I know. I love
on
that. Yes.
on the legal side and on the investment bank side. So, I feel like we already have a team of people that are willing to do things outside the box, right? They wouldn't be affiliated with us.
If they weren't.
Honestly, they wouldn't be Jordon Voytek lawyers
Yep.
if they were traditional. I'm getting in my car, I'm driving to my parking space, I'm working for, 11 hours and then I'm going home, kind of lawyers.
Yeah. That's not aligned with
That
your
it's
firm.
not aligned with where we are now. And so that means that we have a lot of innovators. We have a lot of entrepreneurial people
Love it.
who are looking to do it differently. And that makes a conversation surrounding AI, I think, easier because we have kind of this built in receptivity to innovation or to change.
And being proactive.
Yeah.
There's a growing push within AI to kind of go beyond the traditional ChatGPT. You type in a prompt, it gives you text back, but to create these things called reasoning agents, to where you can give it a more complex question and it will reason through it and give an answer that's of presumably greater depth than you would normally get from ChatGPT. My question would be, what what types of questions would you give to a reasoning agent as a lawyer, and what would you not?
I think that's an interesting question. Yeah, it's a hard one. I think that applicability is the first one that's easy, right?
Mhm.
Is looking at uh, is a particular issue in play. So one of the things that I've spent just some time thinking about how would we use this for drafting, right? We're not using it to draft contracts or releases or anything like that. But when I hear about those parameters being built into AI, I could conceive of a time where we would have it drafting releases and saying, we want our standard confidentiality clause or our standard mutual non disparagement clause included in this release. And so, where we're giving it things that we have drafted
Okay.
and have had human input.
It's your
And
data
yeah,
that you're,
and
yep.
because realistically, and I'm not saying anything here, if you're hearing this for the first time, yes, your lawyers are all doing this, right?
Mhm.
If you call a lawyer and you say, hey, draft me a contract, they do not sit down with an open Word document and start from scratch,
No,
right?
I
I
would
mean,
hope not.
we all go and pull what we think is the closest form that, and we talk about that. So sometimes one of the lawyers will call me and say, hey, this is the deal we have. Or I'll call Michael and say, hey, which APA are we going to start with?
Got it.
What deal was close to this one that had the same elements as this one? And we'll say things like, oh, that one didn't have an earn out and this one does. So we need a different form. We can't use that one. Or that was a stock deal, not an asset deal. And so I could see that as AI gets more sophisticated and we're able to build this reasoning into it, that we will be able to have it give us a great start for that drafting.
Could you imagine, like, hey, here are the top 3 that you should look at to start with this?
Yeah. Or looking at it and being able to say, pull this provision from this agreement and this provision from this agreement and combine those. Um, and length of provisions.
Mhm.
Sometimes IP is really important and we end up with a representation or warranty. Those are like the promises that a seller makes in a deal.
Okay.
Um, we'll end up with a representation about intellectual property that's 3 pages long if they have patents and it's an IP heavy deal. And other deals, it literally says the only IP we have is our logo and our website.
That's
Right?
it.
And
It's for
and our
us.
software contracts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's 2 or 3 lines long. So being able to give guidance to drafting to dictate those things through the reasoning, still I think that's us ultimately making the decision. But I think that
You have the assistance
yeah,
there. That
those are the kinds of things that we'd be comfortable with right now.
are
That
you
could change, but right now.
are you I mean, so it seems like right now, obviously, you're being proactive with using, AI, ChatGPT. So is, other people at your firm, even, the lawyer who you mentioned who is a wealth of knowledge within intellectual property and AI and what that is doing. Um, do you, I guess, see the firm evolving in, a couple years, where you now need to make some investments that maybe, again, you were talking about that legal pad where you're writing down everything. Are you saving now and being prepared to proactively invest in something that's proprietary to you all? Are you looking at off the shelf AI tools? Are you budgeting for this type of expense, if you will? But like, what does that
Yeah.
look like right now for you?
We're not budgeting for it.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
But I will say scrolling LinkedIn, there's a provider that is like, oh, we take AI into big law, and we're clearly not big law,
Okay. Yeah.
right? We're boutique law,
Sure.
but we have big law lawyers, all
Mhm.
of them,
Mhm.
and we have big law sophistication. So I see that and I think, oh, should I schedule a call with them? Should I figure out what that costs? Should I figure out what they can offer?
Or from a competitive standpoint, that's what other
Yes,
firms are gonna be I'm gonna
right.
be competing against that.
And so I think that we definitely, while we're not budgeting for it, I think it's on our radar for sure.
I think that's even a year ago, a lot of firms were thinking it's gonna take hundreds of thousands of dollars to create something, and now, forget, Connor, what you said it was, but the
DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, where the affordability of AI has drastically shifted. I mean, just in the past year alone. And so there's kind of this race to create these affordable AI tools within industries. And, some law firms may have invested $500,000 a year ago, and that's now out of date. And so you see, owners making decisions, and I was just curious of if that's on your mind, if you're already, forecasting for that, because it's scary when you think about that. Okay, now I
Yeah.
have to build this type of technology in my firm. So,
Yeah. And again, I keep coming back to him, but that's why I'm so glad Curtis is my partner.
yeah,
Um, he was the CEO of an AI driven company.
that's amazing.
So that really helps us be kind of on the forefront of it.
Oh,
Having him, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, PhD and intellectual property patent lawyer.
yeah.
And Jennifer, who is also one of our lawyers, is a tech lawyer and really also kind of a IP lawyer. She's not a patent lawyer, but
It has her finger on the pulse of what's going
yeah,
on. And
yeah.
that's,
And
yes.
Ryan has been really deeply involved in tech and SaaS, and so we have a lot of people who sit in a place who are so close to it or have been on the fringes of it or in it from the genesis of it.
Yep.
And so they have a lot of knowledge already. And I think we're lucky to have people on the team, even
Absolutely.
who are all kind of capable of helping us think through it and figuring out where do we go next.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that
And
for you
that
all.
is not, we did not seek out those people for those reasons. We got those people because they're amazing lawyers.
Yeah, sure. That's silver
But
lining.
but it is a total silver
Yeah.
lining. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Just to have people that have those skills. I mean, Michael and I are he won't mind me to say probably like the least tech savvy people in the whole firm, but we find ourselves, to your point about leading
Mhm.
and being the example, we find ourselves being the people who really will have to drive that on the legal side.
Just surround
advocacy
yourself with
too.
smarter people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're brilliant, but I mean, especially in those areas, that's amazing.
You made a point way earlier about the voice commands and just, can I tell an AI to do this and it'll do this? One of the big, in addition to reasoning agents, one of the big, or reasoning models, I mean, one of the big pushes right now in the tech industry surrounding AI is creating agential AI, to where, and ChatGPT's operator is an example of this. Of operator, you basically say, hey, use the internet for me, like go to Amazon and order this for me. That's really a big trend in AI, which is just almost like a true personal assistant AI, to where you can say to it, even physically, like out loud, say to it, do this, and it goes and does that, and you don't need to even like overlook it. I mean, you can, but like it'll like open like a browser and just do its thing, and then you're in your email or whatever while it does that other thing. So that is um, that's in the future, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah.
I hear about that and
Hmm.
it's exciting to me, right? Because I
Hmm.
feel like
Efficiency.
that's a game changer for really all CEOs.
Hmm.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
like the most precious commodity is always time, right?
There's never enough.
There's never enough time. I
Yeah.
feel like if you gave me 10 extra hours every day, I could fill them,
Oh, totally.
right?
Yes.
So those kinds of things I think are game changers for productivity, for driving
Mhm.
productivity.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Is there anything that you want to leave our guests with in regards to AI or your firm, how to contact you?
Certainly you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can look up the either of the firms.
Okay. Or
So
Jacqueline Core. Yeah.
Yeah, Jacqueline Jordon Core. If you Google me, will get you to me every time. Um, and then the firm website is jordonvoytek.com, and the investment banking website is JovoCP, so JOVOCP.com. And there's contact information for all of us there. And I think I would just, if I could just say anything about it, it's just not to fear it,
Yes.
right? To just be open to it. Because I think that's the place. I know a lot of people do have real fear about it right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and in kind of that robots taking over the world way.
Yeah,
And that it's a scary
it
thought, right?
is.
But I think regardless of what happens, it's gonna happen. So we're gonna have to figure out how to live with it.
And everything's figure outable.
It is. It is.
Well, thank you so much. You're
It's been my
amazing.
privilege.
We
Thanks
will
for having me.
drop everything in the show notes. And thank you for coming on.
Yep. Thanks for coming on.